Hi, good evening.
Good evening. So, Ira, I have been noticing that, in most of the job postings, there is a recommendation to have CIPD in the Middle East, and that is the reason I thought I'll also go for the certification. Um, I'll be honest, firstly, I thought it might be easy with the experience I already have, nearly 7 years in HR, into HR business partnering. But when I went through the assignments, the classes, I realized it has so much more to bring as a perspective beyond our daily work. And that really helped me even at my current work, or even, going through interviews and projecting my work that I have done. So it has helped me with a lot of frameworks and, a lot of introspection, I'd say. So I find it extremely valuable.
Thank you, Ashmita. And how did you find balancing? So, Ira Ashmita also has a little baby to look after. So, in top of work,
Oh,
life,
wow.
and a baby, and
That
this
is
program.
impressive.
Ashmita, how did you manage? What worked for you? Or what is working for you, rather?
I think every after every class, the classes finish within 1 week. Like I keep working on the assignment, 2 3 questions at least over the weekend, so that I give some focus time, and over 3 weekends I can complete the entire assignment. I think that is only thing helping me. Yeah.
That is the only thing that keeps you going.
Yeah.
So, and again, within that, what Ashmita is also saying is that for every, so the way the program is designed, Ira, is you've got 7 different units to do. And with each unit, you have an assignment to write. The classes are scheduled in 1 week. So this week, we have been learning a unit called it's called Employment Law, 5HR01. It's a specialist unit very much on HR topic. And at the end of the week, so always on a Thursday, we have a master class related to that. So, the idea behind today's session is they've been talking about employment relationships, the kind of things that employees and employers go through, the conflict you might have in the workplace, how do you resolve that conflict, all of those sorts of things. Today's day, the focus is on another angle to it because here, when we talk about employment relationships, the bit which we don't cover in the CIPD program, because it's a UK based educational qualification, is sometimes the regional perspective. So the idea behind today was to tap into the UAE side of the labor law, but not just that, it was also to look into the entire employee life cycle to identify where potentially conflict might arise because of discrimination or because of biases. So today's day, we've got three things to look at. The first one we're going to look at is a little dipping our toe into what do we already know about the employment law in the GCC and UAE. And then we're going to dip into the different types of uh, can only be listed props. Nikhil, you've lost me. Are you saying can you only listen today? Is that what you're saying? Okay, please type your message again. Can only, I don't understand. Can only listed. Yeah, can you only listen today, please? Absolutely. You can. You can. If you cannot participate, that's absolutely understandable. You can listen and get the most out of it. So the second part we're going to be looking at is biases. So Nikhil, if you are just listening, try to work it out for yourself, and you can type in the answer if you're in a position to do so. So Ira, that is why every week, and in within 1 week, we will finish this particular unit. After this, you get 3 weeks more or 4 weeks more to complete a written piece of work, which is an assignment that gets submitted and graded, and then the grades go to CIPD for verification. That assignment is usually about 4,000 words, a little bit plus or minus, but usually 4,000 words. So that's what Ashmita is referring to. She's referring to the fact that you have to do the learning almost immediately, applying it into the assignment to get it through.
Got it. Got it. Sounds
Yeah.
exciting. Yeah.
Good, thank you. I will not say it's not hard work because it is. It is
Yeah.
incredibly taxing, especially if you haven't been in a university or a study or a academic setting for a bit. It
Mm-hmm.
requires
Mm.
discipline and it requires a lot of
Yeah,
self-motivation. So you can only do well on this
definitely.
program, one, if you are dedicated, two, if you manage to attend the classes and make the time for it, and three, if you're willing to kind of put yourself through those paces and the hard aspects of managing time, managing life,
Yeah.
perhaps prioritizing the study and the assignments, meeting deadlines, planning yourself a little bit differently.
Mm.
But it finishes after about 8 months. So, but for those 8
8 months.
months,
Oh, wow. For level
yeah, so
five.
For level
Okay.
5, it's 7 units and usually one unit a month.
Okay. Okay,
Yeah.
that's very interesting because I think I was told it's 3 to 4 months, I think, was the commitment I was told. But maybe that would depend on
Three
different
to four months is for
entities
the
and
level
how
3. That's for the
level three.
level 3.
Okay. So
So
this is
level 3
five.
has 4 units. Yeah. So level
Okay.
3 has 4 units, and that's one every month. That's why it's 4 months. But
Okay.
level 5, the one which
Okay.
is
Every
probably
unit
more,
is 1 month. Okay, interesting.
yeah, the one that's more appropriate for you
Yeah.
takes about 7 months. And there are
Got
institutions who
it.
will say, you know what, we'll give you a fast track into this, and you can do it in 4 months.
Yeah.
Trust me, you struggle. One, you don't get
Yeah.
the learning, and two, it becomes overwhelming. So even those people who say, okay,
Mm,
we're going to do it in 3 to 4 months, they generally
mm-hmm.
take the extension and finish it over a much longer period. And it's not worth
Yeah. Got
if you're
it.
spending that kind of time, effort, and money into doing something, do it right. And take the time it
Definitely.
needs to do it. Yeah.
Definitely. Makes sense.
Yeah. Nikhil has put in the chat if you can see that CIPD helps to structure our solutions to management as an HRBP. So that's his perspective in terms of how it helps. All right, colleagues, enough about this. Dinah, if you have anything else to share with Ira very quickly before I get started, no more than 30 seconds, and then I'll go. Any tips for Ira?
If you are looking at doing a CIPD, I would also recommend doing it from either Kaplan or any other institute which uh, which gives online classes. Like you have a you have classes instead of attending
Facilitated.
online. Yeah, facilitated classes instead of online classes because it becomes even more interactive and you learn better. Because even when I was researching, there were a lot which were online based, self study based, and that generally, I don't think, thank God I did not opt for one, or else I'm sure I wouldn't have been able to cope with the kind of assignments and study that this requires.
Thank you, Diana. So, and I would echo that as well. I mean, you know yourself better, Ira, better than anyone else. So choose one where it aligns with your kind of preferences of study. The difference that facilitated workshops make over if you were doing this completely on your own is that you actually have a group of people, one that you can liaise and network and learn from. But the second part of this is when there's a facilitator, you can clarify your doubts or so on and so forth. Also, having a deadline and a structure keeps you grounded. So you know month to month you have to finish this. Whereas if you go for some of the other options where it is self-learning or self-directed learning, it becomes a little bit cheaper, but then the discipline goes away. So a lot of people switch over from self-directed learning into facilitated learning because having that somebody there to push you and answer your queries and check your work and verify it for you and another human being to talk to as you go through the program just adds a little bit more value. But again, you've got to take a call in terms of what would work best for you and your situation. So that was just a little starting point and a little initial conversation. Welcome, a very, very warm welcome to each and every one of you on this masterclass for UAE employment law and recognizing bias within ourselves. So we have about an hour together. And within this hour, we are going to have a chat very much about UAE employment legislation. But after that, we'll also be doing a little bit of a practical activity where you can ask and verify and check kind of what your biases are like. And based on your own biases or your analysis of your own biases, we can work through and see if we see this in our workplace, how can we overcome it? If we see this throughout the employee life cycle, what can we do differently to make things a little bit better in our workplace when it comes from this particular angle of of creating a workspace that not only is non-biased, but actually gives a fair opportunity to everybody in terms of participation. So that's what we are going to be covering in today's day. Asif, welcome. We are just getting started. I hope you're doing well. All right. Hi.
Yes.
Can you hear me
uh,
okay?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, lovely. I'm going to share my screen, but before I share my screen, I want to ask you very quickly, can you tell me which of the employment law relevant pieces for the UAE are you already aware of? So I don't want to repeat something if you already know and if you already use this in your workspace. Go on. Which employment law pieces do we already know? Surely you know some. All right, let me give you a couple of hints. Go on, Asif, get us started. Which real employment law piece were you going to speak about?
Uh, there are too many laws actually in labor law. If you will discuss about labor law number 121 or
Yeah,
120, this depends upon the termination or resignation or something like that. There are
yeah,
some different types of rules and regulations they have given there. Due to
yeah,
that, we can give the terminations and dismissals.
yeah. So there is a whole lot on terminations and dismissals, and I don't know how much you all know, but that is one of the most complicated pieces of the UAE labor law. I will talk about it if you want me to. But before I go into that, let's talk about some of the simpler ones. So the first thing you need to know is any employment contract in the UAE is no longer a permanent contract. They tend to be fixed term contract. Does anyone know for what period is it fixed? Of course, you can keep on extending it and keep on renewing it, but what period is it fixed for?
2 years.
This is for 2 years.
Good, you all know this. So now any employment contract, 2 years. It can be renewed, and if you're counting somebody's length of service, although it expires every 2 years, we keep it as on a continuous basis. And this changed very recently, actually, only in 2021. So UAE labor law was set up in the 70s, and for a very long time, there was no changes to it. But in 2021, they did a massive overhaul. All right, second question. One that is very, very popular and often comes up, and this is around notice periods. So, how much notice do you legally need to give employees if you're going to terminate them?
Yes, it depends upon the contract. If
Yeah.
normally it's 30 days we need to give if the employee already complete his probation period.
Yes.
And
So
if
this
he
is
did not complete probation period, then 14 days notice period we need to give.
okay. Anyone else have another thought on this? Go on, Sidra.
Yeah, actually, after probation, it varies from 1 month to a maximum of 90 days, depending on the contract, what's written in that. Plus, during probation period, it's a misconception that it's 14 days. It's not 14 days. It's only 14 days if you are leaving the country, but if you are changing the job within the company, you still have to serve 30 days of notice period.
Exactly. So I was waiting for one of you to highlight that. So whenever somebody asks you an employment law question, your first answer, rather than giving them a direct response, is it depends. And you almost always need to ask the follow-on question, which is, okay, what are the circumstances we are looking at? And you have to be very, very clear. So it is 30 days in most cases. There are only a few exceptions where it can be 14 days, and only a few exceptions where it might be anything different than that. So, for example, if somebody has done gross misconduct and you need to immediately terminate them, then there's a different way of handling that. All right, good. So, these two come up most recently or most often in conversations. The next one then is looking at kind of the family related policies. What is the maternity leave provision? How much should you
It's
give your employees?
45 days with full
Yeah.
pay,
Then,
and then again 30 days with half pay, I think.
okay. Are you guessing,
And
Asif, or do
then
you know?
45 days is confirm, and the next 45 days, total it's actually 90 days, it's with pay. But first 45 days, it's with the full pay. The next 45 days, it's half pay.
Okay. Does anyone feel differently? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you do maternity law kind of work in your remit?
Yeah, it's 45 days full pay and 15 days half pay. So total 60 days.
Exactly. So the change that has come about, which was different to how it was before. Earlier, it was even lesser. Now we've said it's up to 60 days, but 45 days of full pay, 15 days of half pay. And then, depending on, again, it depends comes in because there are certain situations and certain circumstances where it may be longer. So, in addition to giving the maternity pay, what about lactating mothers? So, mothers that need to feed their children. What is the provision around that? Does the law say for that? So when people come back from work after that time, what does the law say for that?
Last is
What?
that we need to give the break for
Yes.
mothers.
How many breaks and how often?
I think 2 breaks for 1 hour.
Very generous,
This is
Asif.
confidence.
So you're guessing, yeah? So technically, as an employer, you have to give breaks, and the break has to be it depends. Okay, so you can say some employers will say, we'll give you up to an hour. You decide how you want to use it. So some will do 3 hours of work, a 15-minute break, or a 20-minute break, or a half an hour break, and then continue working, so on and so forth. So overall, it is an hour, but it depends on how it's broken down. Usually, after a couple of hours they have to take the you have to give them 30 minutes, and not just the time, but you also have to provide the space where they can actually, if they needed to feed or pump or anything like that, they would be able to do so. Okay, paternity leave. What about the fathers? So the mothers get 45 days full pay, 15 days half pay. What about the fathers? What do the fathers
Five
get?
days.
Yes, and this used to be 3 days before. Now it's gone on to 5 days. So that's one of the bigger changes that has come into paternity leave for fathers, and they can take that anytime during. Do you want to tell me, Asif, when can they take this break?
This is during pregnancy period, or even after that
Af
one,
Not during pregnancy. You
within the
can
6 months.
not even 6 months. It has to be after the baby is born, but within the first 6 months. So that's why it is,
Yes.
yeah. So it's within the first 6 months. But again, it depends on when they want to take it. So some fathers will take it almost immediately. They save it up and they add their annual leave together with it. As long as it's used in the first few days or for 6 months, then we are fine. Okay, next one, breaks. How many breaks do you need to give your employees and how often? Just regular working breaks.
It should be at least one break,
Mm-hmm.
and minimum time is 1 hour,
Mm-hmm.
and
And when do you take
consecutively
it?
more than 4 hours or 5 hours they cannot work.
So it is after 5 hours. Nobody can work more than 5 hours, not four. You cannot work for more than
Uh,
5 hours consecutively. After 5 hours, you have to give the break. So Nikhil's putting in all these answers in the chat as well. Colleagues, please keep an eye on it. So in terms of the breaks, okay, one more question before I get into the breaks. What is the maximum number of hours legally a person is supposed to be working?
8 hours.
So over a
48
week,
hours in a week.
not a day, over a week. Go on, Diana.
Over a week,
48 hours.
48.
48, absolutely. 48 hours is the maximum that somebody should be working uh, legally in a week, but it can go up with overtime. What is the maximum with overtime it can go up to?
It can
What's
be
the
2 hours
60
daily.
hours.
2 hours or 3 hours? Ira, what were you saying?
60 hours in a week with
60,
overtime.
exactly. So with overtime, even with overtime, the maximum can be 60 hours a week. Okay. Now, Asif, what you were saying per day. So per day, usually it should be 8 to 9 hours with a maximum of 11 to 12 hours. Again, as long as it does not exceed 60 in a week. If somebody is working on a weekend or their day off, what's the rule around that?
We need to give compensation, right, either in a week, one other day
Yeah,
off, or either we
yeah,
need to pay overtime.
correct. And do you know how much the overtime is if you're working the weekend?
Weekend,
Absolutely, Nikhil. Nikhil has said it's 1.5 times. Okay. So what the law says is If somebody is doing overtime, that overtime usually is paid at 1.5 hours, 1.5 times their salary for the extra hours that they have worked. If somebody is working on a day when that normally should have been their break day, then you again have to give them 1.5 times their salary or another day in the week as a day off to compensate for it. It's called the day off in lieu. So those are the two main elements when it comes to break and when it comes to overtime. Sometimes the article, so there's an Article 19 within our labor law which says overtime should not be more than 144 hours every 3 weeks. So this basically says that if somebody is regularly working overtime, so technically, let's say they did 60 in the first hour, 60 in the second hour, 60 in the third hour, technically per week they can do 60 hours. But if they've done it for 3 weeks in a row, it should not be more than 144 hours. It can't reach 180 hours, which is what if they were doing 3 weeks of 60 hours each, it would end up being. So there are some nitty-gritty details around the labor law on those sorts of things as well. Okay, next one. We've spoken about working hours, we've spoken about break, we've spoken about overtime and rest days. Sick leave. How does sick leave work? How much do you pay? Do you pay? When do you start paying for sick leave? Go on,
Normally,
Asif.
it's
Yeah,
after a probation period, we are going to pay sick leave,
yeah,
and 15 days it's yearly. We have the full pay sick leave. 30
yeah,
days we have the half pay sick leave,
yeah.
and if
And,
the
and
employee
if
is
they
not
need more,
recovered,
yeah.
yes, it will be around I think 3 months, maybe it's unpaid leave.
So, okay. The law says 15 days full pay, 30 days half pay. Nikhil, you've said 60 days unpaid. Actually, it is 45 days unpaid, unless and except uh, it is a terminal illness or something like that. Okay, so usually the unpaid amount of days is 45 further. So it's kind of like 45 days pay and half pay and 45 days without. Altogether, it's about a 90-day period. But this is only for an employee who has completed their probation, not otherwise. All right. I think those were the main aspects I wanted to cover. There's a whole range of things that we can talk about when it comes to gratuity. I could potentially do an entire session just looking at gratuity. So those are the little bits and pieces there about the labor law. But what I'm going to do is open the floor up for questions now. You tell me, is there any specific element of labor law that you want to discuss, one that is more applicable to you and you'd like to get some clarity on? Over to you all. Any questions on this? Very silent. Go on, Ira.
I don't have any specific questions, but for the
Yeah,
sake of discussion, if so when if a person is resigning or a company is terminating them, they have to serve a 30-day notice period, right? But what I would like to discuss is that if there's a mutual agreement between the manager and the employee of reducing that notice period,
yeah,
but the, like from a company point of view, someone who's planning strategy and all that, they feel that no, the
yeah,
days that the person's not coming should be deducted.
yeah.
So
It's one of
how
the
do
most,
you handle the situation? Yeah.
so for the end of service calculation, that is one of the most trickiest and the most kind of controversial of calculations to take place. So when it comes to end of service, essentially the law is very clear, but reality is not like that. So the law says if it is end of service, once the employee has resigned or once you decided to terminate them, for each employee they'll be entitled to the basic salary for 21 calendar days for the first 5 years of their job and 30 calendar days for any subsequent years of service. Maximum salary, but you can give somebody is about 2 years of their sorry, up to the 2 years salary is what you can be given. Now, and that you should pay that within 14 days after they've left the job. Now, what happens is company to company, there's a slightly different perspective in terms of what should you do with the probation period, not probation period, but the notice period. Now, some companies, and a lot of them which are multinationals, tend to work with international kind of laws on this. And especially if it is a senior position like what you were asking about, what they tend to feel is that the moment somebody resigns or the moment you tell somebody you are no longer needed in this job, they have mentally checked out. And the moment that they check out, their productivity drops, their attitude towards work changes, and they're pretty much kind of killing the time till their last moment comes in. And so a lot of employers feel it's a very risky time where a lot of company secrets could have gone. And a lot of companies also feel that this is a time where, as much as they're trying to do a handover, if all of that happens quicker, then we should shorten this time. So some organizations will say, you know what, I know you're supposed to serve a 30-day notice period, but for us, that's very, very risky. And therefore, we're going to give you something called as gardening leave, which essentially means don't come into work and we will just pay you for it. So that is not where it is complicated because the company has decided I would rather take the financial hit instead of the risk of our employee secrets and of our critical management decisions and stuff like that getting messed up. So some companies take that approach. Is it allowed in the labor law? Actually, you're not breaking anything if you're still going to pay them the end of service as planned. And if you're paying them for the time that you've asked them to stay at home, that is also fine. So there is no legal implications over there. The tricky situation comes in, like you were saying, Ira, where the company says, you know what? We don't want you here. And not only are we not going to let you come into work, we are also going to deduct your pay for those days because you are not working. So they should not be paid days. This is where it begins to get tricky. Now, how do you overcome this? Some organizations will say if an employee has any unpaid leave left, not unpaid leave, but if they have any days of paid leave left, then let them take that during that period. So, say for example, I had 3 days that I had accrued and I had not taken them. My probation period, my notice period would reduce by those 3 days. So technically, you're still getting paid for it, but it's your holiday day rather than your notice period day. So that's how you would calculate it, and then you don't calculate your those days as a part of something that you can pay or not pay or remove the pay from. So as a company, you've not paid them anything extra for any accrued leave, and at the same time, you've not broken any laws. So that's one way of handling that, get people to take their leave during that time, and thereby reducing the number of days they spend in work during notice period. Where it becomes very unethical and very illegal is where the organization is the one stressing, we are not going to pay you and we don't want you in the workplace either. That is the thing that law does not agree with. So does it still happen? Yes, it does. Can people do anything about it? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Uh, is it illegal? Yes. Do companies get away with it? Yes. So, for the sake of discussion, there are so many elements over here. And I guess good companies that value their reputation and that value their relationship with the employee that's leaving and the employee is not leaving on bad terms will tend to not do something like that. So technically, notice period is notice period. The person should be working and they should be paid during those entire 30 days. You can shorten it, or you can mutually agree to reduce it, or you can mutually agree to play it in another way. For example, taking holiday days or something like that. But if as an organization you are the one telling somebody we don't want you here, and at the same time you are the one saying we are not going to pay you for it, that's when it gets very, very illegal.
Yeah, but what about if a manager and the employee are on the same page? So a situation that I've faced in the past is that, the employee appeals to the manager's human side, saying that although I might be leaving you in a tough spot, but
Yeah.
think of like how I'm gonna grow in the future, and that's why I'm asking you to do this favor for me, right?
Yeah.
But from a party's point of view, the manager is answerable for paying somebody for a notice period that they didn't serve. So
Yeah.
the employee wants to go early and they're appealing to the manager because then that leaves the manager in a tough spot.
Yeah, and that's the case where again law does not support it. You would
Yeah.
be doing it only out of the goodness of your heart. Do you need to do it? No.
Yeah.
That entirely depends on your relationship, on your perspective, and how you want to kind of go with it.
But if there's
Um,
a chance that the manager gets penalized later on,
so
at
they can, and technically, but the person who is penalizing them isn't going to be anyone other than the organization. So labor law is not going to come and say something like that to them.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So the people who are more likely get behind them is going to be the organization. Say, well, why did you pay this person? You should
Yeah.
not have, or you've done something which you shouldn't. And again, the other
Mm.
part of this, and that's the law which we haven't spoken about, which I will come to in a second, is what you have done for one person because you like them or because you favor them might fall under the discrimination part. You should then be willing to and ready to do it for all your employees.
Mm.
So that's where it gets a little bit trickier. All right.
All right.
And any other questions there? Any other
No, no,
variations here?
thank you. Thank you.
All right. Colleagues, I am going to bring up my slide deck and we'll have a chat now about the other part. If there is anything else you want to know on employment law, like I said, we could talk entirely the whole session about this. But more than that, there are other aspects I want you to quickly go through with you so that we have spent a good amount of time on both topics. Just give me one quick second. I am sharing my screen now. You should be able to see it. There we go. All right, so we've spoken about which laws impact your life a little bit. Before I get into the part on bias, can I very quickly check? And those of you that have been on the CIPD program, this should be a little bit easier for you. Can you tell me what is diversity, what is equity, what is inclusion, and what is belonging? What's diversity? Let's start with that. What do we mean by diversity? No one? Go on,
Diversity.
Diana.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Sorry, Ashwita, you can go after. Go on, Diana.
Yes, so you do not, diversity means that you do not judge or you do not judge on any grounds, including race, sex, gender, designation, nationality, geographical, if any geographical preference, any political preference. So you basically uh, do not differentiate and are open to diverse culture.
Okay. On the right track. Ashmita, what were you going to add to what Diana was saying?
Diversity is having representation of different demographics, all
Yeah,
the points that Diana said.
Diana. Yeah,
And inclusion would be to ensure that once we have diversity, we are ensuring that all of them have a sense of belonging and are being able to bring their diverse perspectives.
yeah,
So, working towards that, and
yeah,
equity would be like just for example, there can be different categories of um, uh, physically enabled people or disabled people, and for
yeah.
disabled people we have a separate washroom. So it is not a favor that we are doing, but ensuring that we have certain processes and systems which help people the way they need to perform. We give them that things. um,
Absolutely. So between the two of you, actually define all the different different words here. Diversity essentially means the same as differences. Diversity means there are a variety of differences, and these could be visible, like the protected characteristics that Diana mentioned. So things like gender, age, ethnicity, cultural beliefs, marital status, those sorts of things. But it could equally be mental diversity in the sense difference of opinions, difference of ideas, different perspectives on things, different educational backgrounds, different financial backgrounds. Diversity means differences. Equity and equality are where Diana says, like Diana said, is where you are treating people in a similar sort of a way without prioritizing, favoritizing, or discriminating against anybody based on those characteristics. Inclusion is, like Ashmita said, the ability for an organization to create a space where all these people with all these differences feel like they are respected, they can bring their authentic self to work, and that their ideas are very much welcomed. Belong is you feel a part of the group and that you're not excluded for any particular reason. So, if I were to show you a picture, essentially these are how the words play out. So, if you look at the first picture, you've got all sorts of people in the workplace. That's what diversity is like. There's a whole range of differences. Equality is you are treating everybody the same. So as you can see over there, there's a person in a blue shirt, a red shirt, and a purple shirt, and you've given each one of them a box so that they can stand equally on those boxes and see. Now, unfortunately, equality, just because you've given everybody equal, doesn't mean that's what they need. So, when it comes to equity, that's where you're giving people exactly what they need in order to be treated fairly. So, if you can see over there, the blue shirt has got none, the red shirt has got one, and the purple shirt has got two in order to even out this playing field. So, let me give you a real life example of what might look like in the workplace. So, equality in the workplace says every employee gets 3 days of religious leave, and you take that during Eid. So, in addition to your annual leave days, you also get 3 days of holiday. Now, equality would be everybody gets 3 days. Equity would be depending on which religion you celebrate, you get that specific religious holiday for those 3 days. If I don't believe any religion at all, I could take that as a something day. So some organizations will say you'll get 3 days of religious leave. That was equality. You're giving everybody 3 days. Equity is saying, actually, you know what? We could have people that don't want to take it for Eid, or they don't want to take it for Diwali, or they don't want to take it for Christmas. Maybe they just want to take it as a well-being day. So some organizations, rather than calling them as religious leave, you're giving 3 days to people, but you're giving it to them as personal days or well-being days, and you can choose what you want to do with those. So from your perspective, you have now become a lot more inclusive, a lot more open-minded to the possibility that people may want to use it in a slightly different way. So that's equality and equity. Inclusion is going that one step further to say, do we really need to have that kind of a distinction at all? Um, so, Nikhil, I've just seen your note which says the wall was the same for all. Yes. Inclusion would say, well, do you really need that wall? I mean, what if we just made it into a glass wall rather than a wooden wall? Then everybody would be able to see. And you could even go a step further to say, do we really need that wall in the first place? So, what has happened? I just came back over the summer from the UK, and one of the biggest thing and the biggest conversation going on in the UK right now is about genders. And in UK, the number of people that are identifying themselves as a gender other than a male or female has really increased. And then the question comes, okay, where am I going to go to use the washroom? Will I go in the male one? Will I go in the female one? And I'm not disabled. Why should I go in the disabled one if I don't identify myself as any of those genders? So, what the organizations in the UK are doing, including, yes, exactly, including having this is have what they have is gender neutral washrooms. Anybody can use any washroom. So you don't have very specific uh, demarcation. Anybody can use any of those washrooms, and that's their way of being inclusive. Saying we don't need to have two separate lines, we don't need to have two separate washrooms, we don't need to put a board on it. We are just saying you this is a washroom, and whoever wants to use it can use it. So that's another way in which you can take inclusion to that next level. Belonging is, as you can see, like the players on the field, you want them to feel a part of the team. Therefore, they are also dressed in the team wear. So it's going that one step further to truly embrace everybody. Now, why am I explaining you so much about these words? Because it has a huge impact on our conversation about bias. So, very quickly, if I get into our employee life cycle, there are a couple of different stages at which we do different things within HR, right? For anybody who's working in talent acquisition, you will be looking at attraction, recruitment, onboarding. So that first kind of piece is all of your roles. And workforce planning might fall under your remit as well. Then those of you that are working within learning and development, employee recognition, rewards and compensation, employee relations, performance management, you might be looking at the other parts of the employee life cycle. And then there are some people who specialize just in exits, whether that's redundancy, whether that's retirement, whether that's payroll calculations. So pretty much throughout the employee life cycle, there are going to be occasions where there is a potential for bias. And sometimes this is so subtle that we don't even realize it. And when it becomes unrecognizable bias, that's what we call as unconscious bias. Now, I am going to give you a few terms over here, and we don't have enough time for you to be able to do research on these and find examples, but I'm going to give you an example of each to show you what these look like. So we've got something called as affinity bias. We've got something called as conformity bias, confirmation bias, attribution bias, halo effect, horn effect, appearance effect, contrast effect, and authority bias. Now, has anyone heard of any of these terms before? Do you know what any of these already mean? And can you give me an example? Have you come across any of these biases? Okay. We're going to do one very short, quick activity. Do you all have pen and paper? Can you give me a quick thumbs up if you have pen and paper around you? Or electronic list on which you can make some kind of a list.
I do.
You do or you don't?
I do. I do.
You do. Okay, okay.
Okay.
Diana, how about you?
Yes,
Sadra,
we
how about you? Yes. Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
What I want you to do very quickly, you cannot, that's fine. Don't worry, Nikhil, that's fine. You just think about it. Think about at least 10 people that you really, really trust in your workplace. I know it's tough. I'm not saying personal life, I'm saying workplace. It's going to be tough to kind of come up with three or four as well. But at least try and write down three or four people that you really trust in your
their
workplace if you can't
names
reach them.
basically.
Yeah, yeah, names. Yeah, I'll give you 10 seconds for it. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6,
Could
5.
you please repeat the question? I got lost there a bit.
The question is, write down names of people that you
Mhm.
trust in the workplace.
Okay.
Yeah, the people that are your friends, people that you are close to, people that you would trust in your workplace. Now, some people
Okay.
go say, I don't trust anyone in my workplace. I don't go to work to trust people. And that might be a fine assumption to make, but think about it. You know, if you were going away on leave and you had to leave your work with somebody else, who would you trust enough um, to kind of look after your work in your absence? All right. I hope you've written down a couple of names. What I want you to do is very quickly, and you can use a chat or just if you've thought about it, tell me how many people did you come up with? So, Dinah, I'll start with you. Dinah, how many did you come up with? How many people in the workplace?
Two.
Two. Okay, Sidra, how about you? Ashmita, how about you? Three for Sidra. Perfect. Ashmita, Nikhil, how many people? Two for Ashmita, Nikhil, Ira, Asif. You can just tell me if you want to unmute and speak, or you can put in the chat. One for Nikhil. That's it. Zero for Ira. Okay. You're of the category where you don't really know if you can trust anyone in the world. Okay. And well, it's the reality of the way we live in. Those of you that have written anything more than one, if that person is of the same gender as you, strike them out. If that person is of the same nationality as you, strike them off. If that person is of the same age as you, strike them off. If that person speaks the same language as you do, and I mean mother tongue, I don't mean workplace language, strike them off. Okay, I've only given you four criteria. If it is one of these, same gender, same nationality, same language that you speak, and anything like that. So, how many do you have left now?
One. And I'm not sure of his age. That's why I don't know. Maybe he's also of same. But
Zero.
You've gone to zero, right? There is a reason behind this. And technically, it's because there is something called as affinity bias at play. Generally, we tend to trust those people who are similar to us. Now, there could be some element of similarity, like you trust them because they're in the same field of work as you are. You trust them because they're the same gender as you, or you trust them because you over time have developed a friendship with them. But the reason you developed a friendship with them is because you're aligned, and that could be because of your age, it could be because of your nationality, it could be because of the same sports team you support, it could be because there's something that is similar between the two of you. Now think about your manager. Your manager is going away on a holiday and they need to trust somebody to do their work or trust them while they are away. Who is your manager most likely to choose? Somebody that they have an affinity with. So somebody that they are likely to be similar to. So this affinity bias plays in where sometimes we have a tendency unconsciously to choose people who are similar to us or where we find some element of connection. And it is so subtle. And think about it, right? You're going into a room full of people that you never know. Who do you go and speak to first? Or you go into a room full of people and there are loads of chairs. Where do you go and sit? Generally, we will scan, do a quick scan. Our eye makes contact with people, and you try and look for similarities. I was running a training session this morning, and I'm not joking you, there were 14 people there. The first person that came in was an Emirati man. The second person that came in was a IT guy of Indian origin. The third person that came in was a Filipino lady. The fourth, and I'm giving you, physical characteristics to differentiate people by. That's absolutely fine, Ira, not a problem at all. The fifth person that came in was an Emirati man again. Guess where he went and sat? Next to the other Emirati man. The next person coming in was a second Filipino lady. Guess where she went and sat? Next to the other Filipino person. Then two Emirati ladies walked in. They sat together. Then an Indian woman came into the room. She went and sat to the Indian man. Not that there were not seats anywhere else, but this is affinity bias at play. You don't even recognize it, you don't even realize it, you don't even think about it, but the place. So, if I told them, oh, you're being discriminatory, they'll be like, no, 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 no. You will not think about it consciously, but somewhere unconsciously, affinity draws you in terms of where you go and sit. And if you're aware of it, then you consciously try not to do so, but be aware. So affinity bias plays out. If a manager is making a decision, who should I promote next, or who is going to be my deputy, or who can I trust when I go away, sometimes this affinity bias kicks in. When you are doing, say, shortlisting or something like that, affinity bias, you might read a name and see a particular university, or you might see a particular thing mentioned on your CV, and you're like, oh, I can relate to that. We tend to, whether we want or not, unless we are very, very careful, have a bit of an affinity towards this person and give them a little tiny bit of a preferential treatment. So, this is one of the biases that we've got to really, really watch. Questions on affinity bias? Have you seen something like this happen to you? Play out for you? Okay, right. Next one is what we call conformity bias. So, what is conformity bias? If somebody makes a statement that we agree with, we tend to just listen to that part of the statement. So, for example, how can I explain this? So, conformity bias is you are in a meeting with somebody, and there are loads of people over there. But two people in the meeting support your idea. You're trying to pitch something, and two people support your idea. Automatically, you will start favoring those people who are supporting you. It's a human behavior. Why? Because they are already conforming to your ways of thinking. They think similar to you, so you feel like, yeah, they are in my territory there, and I will treat them. You don't consciously do this, but unconsciously start treating them a little bit better because compared to everyone else, they have now conformed to your idea or agreed with what you are saying. And that's what conformity bias might look like. So, another way of thinking about this is think about when you are looking at uh, hotels, right? Say you're going on a holiday and you're looking to book a hotel, or you are going for a meal and you're looking to book a restaurant. Why do you think we go and check those TripAdvisor reviews? That is partly conformity bias because we are trying to conform or agree with somebody else's perspective in terms of how they have rated it. Now, there's nothing wrong with it, but often we are swayed by which hotel or restaurant to book based on what other people have said about it. So if somebody has given it a 5 star, you're more likely to book that one than if something had received a 3 star, conforming your thoughts to that particular thinking. So it could be two ways. Somebody agrees to you, and therefore you treat them better, or you start agreeing to somebody's way of thinking, um, because that bias has kind of crept into you. You haven't gone to that restaurant, you haven't gone to that hotel, but you have now formed an opinion of that place based on the feedback or thoughts of somebody else. Similarly, it is not your idea but you're supporting, or somebody else is supporting you, and you now feel like, oh yeah, they must like me, or they are with me, or I'm going to treat them better because they're supporting me because they're conforming to your ideas of thinking. That's conformity bias. Any questions on this one? Okay, I've got another example over here, and let's see if you can identify what that might be. So during a job interview, a hiring manager feels an instant connection with the candidate because they have both attended the same university. As a result, the manager looks or overlooks at the candidate's lack of relevant experience. What type of bias would this fall under? It's one of two. We've only spoken about two right now. What do you think? Is this affinity bias or is this confirmation bias? Or conformity bias, rather? Absolutely. So the fact that you're from the same university kind of makes you look at that person in a slightly better light. See the next one there, then, which is, of course, an example of conformity. A team member agrees with the majority opinion during a meeting, even though they have doubts about their decision. They fear being seen as disruptive if they voice their concern. And this is your bias kicking in, saying, well, if I say something that does not agree with everybody else, I'm going to be singled out. So that's another way in which conformity bias might play out. Yeah. Next one there, I'm going to go back into our previous slide and talk to you about the next two. Confirmation bias and attribution bias. So confirmation bias is if you think something about something, you will just always go with it. So if I didn't make that very clear. Confirmation bias essentially is I have a preconceived notion that people who dress well are going to be smarter. Or I have and that's appearance effect as well, by the way. Confirmation bias, when it talks about people dressing up, will fall under appearance effect. I tend to be better aligned with those people who are dressed better or who appear to be more well put together than those who are not. Not necessarily that they are not smart or that they're not capable or that they're not qualified, but that bias kicks in because they present it in a much better way. And that's appearance effect. Confirmation bias is you already have a preconceived idea about something, and anybody that says something similar to it, you will say, yep, that's absolutely true. And therefore, we agree with it. So I'm going to give you an example of that as well. A supervisor gives more weight to an employee's opinion because the employee is well dressed and has a polished appearance, even though their ideas lack substance. That is appearance effect. So, if you look at somebody purely in the way that they are dressed and they are appearing, and therefore tend to agree with what they're saying, is appearance effect. A manager believes employees lazy because they were late to work twice last week without considering that the employee had car trouble. This is an example of confirmation bias. So I think you are lazy, and now that you've come to work late twice, it has reconfirmed my belief that you are lazy, and therefore I am going to not even consider or think about why you potentially might be there. It's absolutely fine, Nikhil. See you. Good night. Take care. That is conformity bias. Colleagues, give me one quick second. I'm just checking in how we are doing with time. Okay, so far so good. So that is our two types of bias there. conformity or confirmation bias, where somebody confirms your opinion of them and then therefore you treat them in a slightly negative way. An appearance effect, where somebody is dressed well and therefore you treat them slightly differently, or you are more impressed by them than others. So I'm going to stop over here. 4 biases spoken about so far. Any questions? Anything you want to ask or share? So far, so good. Okay. All right. Next to halo and horn. So halo effect is, you've seen those pictures of angels where you see a big blue light on top of their head. That's called a halo. Essentially, you're giving somebody a crown. So if I say, ooh, candidate A is an Oxford University graduate and candidate B is graduated from uh, Indiana School of English. You don't know any of these organizations, but because Oxford has a better reputation, you might say, ooh, if this person has gone to Oxford, surely they will be smarter than the person who has gone to a random school which you've not heard of. That's halo effect, where you are tried kind of wowed by what people say. Now, a prime example of this will be on LinkedIn. If you look at a lot of people's LinkedIn profile, they will say so and so person ex Google, ex Emirates, ex PwC, ex all these big four companies. And the idea over there is you are trying to create a halo by latching onto a particular brand name. So when on LinkedIn people put that and you look at somebody's CV and see if they worked at a place that you recognize and that you know of, you tend to treat them a little bit better than if they're working at a company which you may not have heard of. Or if somebody has gone to a university that's prestigious in your opinion, compared to somebody who's just gone to a university that you haven't heard of, you might be tempted to treat them differently. That is the halo effect. Horn effect is the opposite of that. You think something is not right or something is not proper, and therefore you treat them a little bit negatively. So, a prime example of this happens in interview. Imagine you are interviewing somebody and a candidate walks in who is in completely crumpled clothes. There is a big stain on their shirt, and they walked into the interview like that. Automatically, their shabby appearance, and you're beginning to think, this person, I don't think that, how can they show up to the interview so ill prepared? Were they not organized? Could they not iron their shirt? Didn't they have a clean one? And just because they were dressed poorly, or their hair was messy, or they didn't put any makeup, or anything like that, or they were smelling for some reason, that horns come out. And you begin to be a little devil saying, not this person. If they couldn't be bothered, you don't know what the reason is, but your unconscious bias kicks in. Now, a prime example of this, again, in terms of where you are choosing to sit in a place where you don't know anybody, if you really think carefully about it, you are not going to go to somebody or sit next to somebody that you feel like they look a little bit messy or there's a smell coming off them. Um, why? Because there's an instant dislike. That is the horn effect. So, halo effect is when you are wowed by somebody because of their association with something, and horn effect is where you treat somebody not so great because of because you feel like I don't want to be you are without any reason repulsed by them, any justifiable reason repulsed by them. So that is halo and horn effect. So I've got an example over here at the Oxford University one. When a shortlisting candidates who had studied at Oxford University gets shortlisted, even if they do not meet the criteria for the role, that is halo effect. And a hiring manager sorry, no, that's one. Neither one of these. Let's see if I have an example. No, I haven't got an example of horn effect. Okay, that's halo and horn. Any questions on this? Spoken to you about appearance effect as well. I'm going to tell you now about authority bias. So authority bias is you just agree with something or you listen to something when a person in position or power tells you. So if I say something to you, just because I'm in a position of authority and I've said it to you, you might believe me. You might agree with me. You might take that more positively than if somebody who was a random person that you don't know, didn't have authority, was saying the same thing. And sometimes just because a manager has said so, you do it. Or just because the news was published in a leading newspaper, you believe it. So that's authority bias coming in, where unconsciously you tend to agree with or you tend to support what a person in position of power is saying. So if there were two people and you are to vote for one and one of the ideas of one of the two people, generally the person in authority or the person in power or the person who has power over you or authority over you is the one you're likely to pick, even though you may agree with the other one because of the fear of what that authority or power can do to you. That's authority bias kicking into your ways of working. Any questions here? Okay. Last two left, attribution bias and contrast effect. Attribution bias is where you attribute something to somebody. So attributes are kind of tendencies. Attributes are characteristics of a particular person. And when you kind of have these thinking about people. So, for example, in sports, one of the most common attribution biases that you will see is that black African men tend to be good athletes. So, if there are two runners and one of them is a black male athlete and the other one is a white male athlete, and they were both going to be racing, and you were asked to bet on one, because of your attribution that perhaps the black African male will be more athletic, you might bid for them as opposed to the other person, because somewhere at the back of your conscious of your mind you have a belief or you have an attribution that anybody like this will do something like that. Another one is you got somebody who is incredibly fat and unhealthy, and you got somebody who's very fit and fine, and they are both going to be competing in a fitness test. And your assumption or your belief or your attribution is the person who is fat and unhealthy will do worse than the person who is more athletic and leaner looking, even though the other person may be equally capable. So that's attribution bias, right? A young couple is dancing and an old couple is dancing, and you automatically assume or kind of attribute the fact that the old couple will probably be slower in terms of speed than the younger one. There is no truth to these statements, but these are attributions which we might have put on different characteristics. And in places like the South Asian continent, we tend to do this a lot. We will say things like dash religion are like that, or dash nationality are like that, or dash people from that part of the world are like that. So we see it a lot, and we say that even sometimes in jokes. We say that even in terms of how we might belittle somebody. Attribution plays out a lot, and it plays out in jokes, it plays out in stories, it plays out in characters, but it is in a way an attribution bias. You are just making an assumption about something that may not necessarily be true. So there you go. A manager assumes that an employee who performed poorly on one task is generally incompetent. So they've attributed one mistake to the fact that they're incompetent, and this assumption affects the evaluation of the employee's other work. So now you've thought, okay, this person was lazy or this person performed poorly. They must be terrible performers. Therefore, I'm going to rate them low. So in the job evaluation, or not in a job evaluation, in a performance evaluation, scoring somebody lower just because you've made this assumption because they performed poorly on one task is a type of attribution bias in the workplace. Does that make sense? Questions here? I have no idea whether this is landing or not because I can't see any reactions, and I have no idea if you have questions or not. So I'm going to pause for a second and let you all tell me how you're finding it. Helpful, useful?
It's actually very interesting, and a lot of it is actually true that we don't realize it, but it's always there. So yeah,
It's hidden. Yeah.
yeah.
Have you seen any examples of these, Sidra?
I think for all, it's very true, especially if you are working in like let's say recruitment or any such area, you will observe that it's always there. Let's say the example that
Yeah.
you for Oxford University, it's always there, especially with the candidates. If let's say somebody has changed the job very frequently, then there will be a bias towards it, that maybe they are not very stable in their job, but maybe the
See?
thing
Yeah.
could be different as well. But
So
it's always,
that one where you look at somebody's CV and say, oh, they're changing so many jobs, they're not likely to stay in my workplace.
yeah,
That is a type of attribution bias. Just because they did not stay at the previous employers for a long time. That's exactly like this, right? One person performed poorly in one task, you now think they're incompetent. A
that's
person left a couple of jobs in the past quickly, you're assuming that they're not going to stick around at yours either. Again, attribution bias.
that's right.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Sidra. Diana, Ashmita, Asif, any thoughts, any questions? Okay. All right. I've got one more to do, one more bias, and then I'll open it up for questions. So the last one we had over there is contrast effect. So again, I'll use a recruitment example for this because it happens quite a lot at interview times. So contrast effect is, let's say you are hiring for an accountant, okay? And you have a criteria of what you're looking for. Your criteria is you're looking for somebody who's got 2 years of experience. You're looking for somebody who's good with numbers. You're looking for somebody who has whatever. You have a criteria for hiring this particular accountant. So your first candidate walks into the interview. You shortlisted them based on their qualifications, and this candidate is very charismatic, very confident. They have all sorts of answers to your questions, and you do well and they do well and you're impressed by them. So that is your first candidate. Second candidate, that's absolutely fine, Ashmita, see you. The second candidate that walks in also has the same kind of experience, also has exactly everything that you're looking for, just like the first candidate, but they're a little bit more quiet, they're a little bit more reserved, and you kind of score them lower. Why? Because in comparison to the first candidate, not in comparison to your criteria, in comparison to the first candidate, they are a little bit less dynamic, a little bit less charismatic. But dynamism and charisma is not your criteria. So, contrast effect is where you compare two people or two characteristics and therefore score somebody higher or lower rather than comparing it against your criteria or your original kind of benchmark. That's what contrast effect is, where you're comparing two people rather than comparing each person individually against your criteria. Now, where do we see this in the workplace? Of course, we see it in interviews quite a lot, but we also see it quite often in performance management. So each employee is given their objectives, and you look at how they've done against those objectives, you measure their KPIs, and you score them. And you do that for your second employee, and you do that for your third employee, and you do that for your fourth employee. And technically, you should be scoring each person and assessing them against their own objectives. But what we sometimes tend to do is say, okay, let me look at these four people in my team. And you begin to compare them against each other, although their job roles are very different, although their outcomes and objectives are very, very different. That's contrast effect in play, where you have kind of compared people not against a criteria but against each other unconsciously, and therefore treated somebody better or treated somebody less effectively. So there you go. Those are the 9 types of biases that you might see. Any questions? Anything else you want to know? Well, Diana, Asif, Sidra, thank you for attending the masterclass. I hope you enjoyed it. Have a fabulous evening. I will see you tomorrow when we do our evening class. It'll start at 6 p.m. Go on, Diana, something to share?
Well, no, actually, no, don't have to share anything. Of course, the list is long, so I think we'll have to. My tendency of forgetting, I might just forget all the words, but yeah, I think we'll have to refer. I will have to refer to it once again, probably watch the masterclass once again, and so that it helps me retain better.
Yeah.
It was
So we
very
did it in a very quick whistle top. To be honest, unconscious bias training can take anywhere from 1 day to 3 days if you
okay.
really go into depth, right? Because there are so many ways in which this plays out. Um, but I guess what I want you to take away today in this little mini taster is the fact that be cautious, be aware of your actions, and sometimes pause and reflect and think, okay, why did I do this? And that makes you begin to question. The fact that you've heard today just makes you a little bit aware that these could be the potential pitfalls that I fall into. And then, of course, when you watch it again and when you
Yes,
look
and
at
it's
it,
so
by the way,
common.
that,
Yeah, it is
yeah,
true that it is common. We somewhere subconsciously do make biased decisions sometimes, or basically just judge somebody on those
yeah,
attributes.
yeah. And that's the word, the judge word, right? That judgment comes almost instantaneously. And
Right.
it's not a bad thing because that's how humans have evolved. We have a gut instinct, a flight or a fight instinct, but sometimes it's not always right. And that's the thing that this unconscious bias teaches you. So, thank you so much for listening in. I hope you get to watch it again. If you want, I can circulate the slide deck for you guys to look at and review later on. But aside from that, have a lovely, lovely evening. See you tomorrow at 6 p.m. when we'll do a full assignment briefing for 5HR01.